Tillerson later scrambled to walk back that announcement, saying the policy had been, quote, misportrayed after Erdogan promised to strangle such a border force, quote, before it's even born.
The U.S. is in the process of creating a terror army on our border. What we have to do is nip this terror army in the bud. America, do not encroach on our borders. Do not provoke us.
Meanwhile, Turkey intensified its attacks on a Kurdish militia group in Syria, sending group troops across the border. And that has only complicated the already complex situation in Syria. It has also put Turkey's alliance with the U.S. under a rigorous stress test. Turkey considers the militia called YPG a terrorist group, but the YPG played a key part in the American-backed fight against ISIS. Turkey calls it Operation Olive Branch. The assault against YPG targets in Afrin, Syria began yesterday. The Kurds responded today by shelling Turkish border areas. At least 2 Kurdish rockets hit the border town of Kilis. 3 more rockets were fired at another border town, Rahanlu. Neil Kuksel is in Istanbul with more on what this means for the region.
Destination Syria, and a new war within a war. The fighter jets and tanks are Turkish. But the bulk of the ground fight will be fought by these soldiers, the Freee Syrian Army, a group supported and trained by Turkey. Turkey and the Freee Syrian Army work well together because they're both anti-Assad and anti-YPG. The YPG is a Kurdish militia. It is aligned with the PKK, a group of Kurdish militants locked in a deadly battle with Turkey for independence for more than 3 decades. And that helps answer why now, when the Syrian war seemed to be in its final stages. Turkey is threatened by the YPG's newfound power and worries that its members are determined to create their own state. Turkey insists peace is what it's after. It's hoping the mission's name, Operation Olive Branch, might somehow convince people of that. But the president's speech today was full of battle cries. Know this, Erdogan said, this is a national struggle. We'll crush anyone who stands against us.
This is a major gamble. Will he become deeply involved in Syria? How far will he go inside Syria? Will Erdogan sacrifice his strategic relationship with the United States?
The U.S. and Turkey are NATO allies at a critical juncture. Washington likes the YPG because it helps in the fight against ISIS, so the U.S. is arming the militia. That, to Ankara, is a dangerous betrayal. Both the YPG and Turkey accuse the other of stoking instability and violence. Both see powerful opportunities in a divided Syria. Clearly, there's plenty to worry about after ISIS.
Turkey has invaded Syria with the goal of beating back U.S.-allied Kurdish militias. RT correspondent Anya Paranpil is with us tonight for the breakdown of this. It seems like President Erdogan is pretty determined on this.
Absolutely, Ed. The latest front to open in this conflict highlights just how many foreign actors are involved in what some have referred to as a Syrian civil war. At least 9 people, including 6 civilians, were killed as a result of Turkish airstrikes conducted on Saturday. According to Turkey's prime minister, the assault dubbed Operation Olive Branch consists of Turkish troops, warplanes, artillery, and tanks offering support to Syrian rebels for hire known as the Free Syrian Army. The FSA was previously backed by the United States with the goal of ousting the Assad government, but now find themselves employed by Turkey to fight another US-backed militia, the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. Turkish forces reportedly captured several villages in the Syrian region of Afrin over the weekend. Their goal is to oust Kurdish forces known as the YPG, or People's Protection Units, because it's seen as an extension of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, which Turkey considers to be a terrorist organization. While President Donald Trump ended U.S. support for so-called moderate rebels early on in his presidency, including the Free Syrian Army, He continues U.S. support for the Kurds. That's despite November reports, according to Turkey's foreign minister, that Trump promised Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan he was ending that policy. Russia's foreign ministry blamed Trump's support for the Kurds for the current situation, saying, quote, uncontrolled deliveries of modern weapons, including reportedly the deliveries of the man-portable air defense systems by the Pentagon to pro-U.S. forces in northern Syria, have contributed to the rapid escalation of tensions in the region and resulted in the launch of a special operation by the Turkish troops. Speaking Monday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov charged the United States with inflaming separatist aspirations among Syria's Kurds, stating Washington has actively encouraged and continues to encourage separatist sentiments among Kurds, which he said, quote, is either a lack of understanding of the situation or an absolutely conscious provocation. He also accused Washington of discouraging the Kurds from engaging in dialogue with the Syrian government. Turkey's actions come just several days after Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said the U.S. will maintain an open-ended presence in Syria. His comments followed an announcement from the Pentagon that it was creating a 30,000-strong militia described as a border force in Syria. Tillerson later scrambled to walk back that announcement, saying the policy had been, quote, misportrayed after Erdogan promised to strangle such a border force, quote, before it's even born.
The U.S. is in the process of creating a terror army on our border. What we have to do is nip this terror army in the bud. America, do not encroach on our borders. Do not provoke us, or we will run out of patience.
It appears now Tillerson's remarks were not enough to keep Ankara from going to war. Back to you, Ed.
Thanks, Anya.
Turkey has had, and there's really little other way of putting it, Eve, has had a Kurdish problem for a while now. And it's living in a parallel universe when it comes to its perception of these Kurdish militias versus how the U.S. and members of the U.S.-led coalition see the Kurds. We've been saying this again and again. We just heard it in that report. To the Turks, these Kurdish militias, whether we're talking about the Syrian ones based in Syria, in this province that they're right now waging this campaign in, whether we're talking about a different Kurdish group, the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which is based in southern Turkey, a different group, Turkey equates it all. It lumps them all together, and in Turkey's views and in official statements again and again, they are referred to all as linked up terrorist groups. To Turkey, they are terrorists. To Turkey, they must be eliminated. Now, this might seem paradoxical. You'll hear Erdogan and other Turks say, we have nothing against the Kurds. We're simply targeting these Kurdish militias. Militias, which, as we just heard, are also very effective fighters alongside the U.S. in driving back the Islamic State group, have practically vanquished that group on the ground. Look, this campaign began in August of 2016. We already had a military operation launched by Turkey where there was an incursion across the border into northern Syria, into the region now in between Afrin and another one to the east, where they basically were repelling Islamic State fighters and at the same time trying to eliminate and push back the Kurdish militias, this group. They have controlled, and Syrian fighters have controlled, that central zone along its northern border. What they haven't controlled, this was an 8-month campaign, the one they launched in 2016. What had eluded their grasp was to the west and to the east, the west being the Afrin area, and then Manbij, which is to the east, which is now most likely going to be the target of the next Turkish military offensive. What does Turkey want to do? Simple. They just want to get back control by pushing back these Kurdish militias of that entire northern strip. They want a contiguous area of their own control.
But of course, in the war in Syria, we've seen Turkey align themselves with the rebels against Assad and indeed against Russia. So surely this will have an effect.
Look, you know, how can you make an already almost impossibly complicated situation even more complicated and even harder to figure out and discern? We know that Turkey spoke to Russia last week. Turkish military and intelligence officials flew on a lightning-quick mission to Moscow, consulting with the high Russian military brass. Can we do this? They needed Russia's blessing because, A, Russia had troops actually on the ground in that enclave that the Turkish offensive is now taking place in. Plus, the Russians control the sky. skies, essentially over that entire region where the Turkish planes were bombing on were striking on Saturday. They needed Russia's blessing. Did they get it? Well, what we know is whatever the Russians said, yay or nay, go ahead and do this. We did see the Russians say that they were pulling back their troops from that region, pulling them out of that area. And it seems, at least, that they've given a sort of implicit green light. Why are they doing this? Perhaps Russia's playing a double game here by giving Turkey the green light to go ahead and do what they need to do. Do it quickly, though, Turkey. We're not going to let you keep going, doing this for weeks and months. Quickly, get it over with. We'll let you do it. Perhaps it's slightly in Russia's interest to play all sides, driving that wedge between Turkey and that Western-led, U.S.-led coalition. Russia knows that whatever Turkey is doing in that area right now is making the U.S. not just furious, but almost hopping mad. We had Rex Tillerson on the phone with his Russian, Turkish counterparts over the weekend, expressing in diplomatic language concern. I suspect that there were slightly sharper emotions than that. Russia knows that right now relations are very strained between Turkey and the U.S., and perhaps that accommodates Russia for the time being. Bottom line, more strife, more complication, no end yet to the Syrian conflict.